Welcome back to the channel, everybody. Today's video is going to be on Rotten Tomatoes and the lack of credibility that they've been having on movies as of the last year or two, because it seems as though a lot of the movies that are coming out, Rotten Tomatoes has a bias towards those that are either against pushing certain agendas or a positive outlook towards those that are pushing an agenda. So I have on here the screen. I'll briefly go over it. You can pause and read the rest of it if you want. But for any of you guys that don't know what Rotten Tomatoes are, Rotten Tomatoes and the Tomato Meter score are the world's most trusted recommendation resources for quality entertainment. As the leading online aggregator of movie and TV show reviews from critics, we provide fans with a comprehensive guide to what's fresh and what's rotten in theaters and at home. And so for them, it's supposed to be a gathering of different critic reviews, all positive and negative combined, to give an overall score, both from the critics that are actually paid to go out and watch the movie, and then also from the general audience that is able to give their input and insight as to how the movie is, which seems like a fair thing to do. However, when some of the critics are actually seeming to be paid or suspected to be paid by certain studios to give a better review, that's when you start to actually affect their true numbers, because there are a lot of people that, when it comes to movies, they depend on Rotten Tomatoes to give them a inside look of, oh, is this movie worth going to see, or is this a movie I can pass on? And a lot of the critics seem to be very out of touch with how the movie and the story, the lore, the characters, just everything about the movie, they seem to be kind of lost or not in tune with what's going on, and that unfortunately affects a lot of the scoring, because to have everything just be solely from fans doesn't give a true, honest review. To have a lot of people that literally are just off the street, I don't know what this is about, I'm going to review it, oh, this is not my kind of movie, here's a bad score, that also doesn't give it an honest review. But a combination of the two would. But it seems a lot of people are being paid off. And that's the problem that Rotten Tomatoes is facing today. Now, they have a feature where, because for any of you guys that don't know, they used to be owned by Warner Brothers, and then Rotten Tomatoes got sold to Fandango, which is the movie ticket sales company here, at least in the US. And so with that, they wanted to make it to where it's fair for people that are actually reviewing. You have to have actually bought a ticket to go see the movie to post a review, which I personally think is fair, because for people that have never watched the movie and you just see the choice on, you know, the computer screen, phone screen, whatever, and just say, oh, I don't like this movie, I'm going to give it a bad review, it doesn't do anybody any good. So to actually show that you have went out and watched this movie, or at least to show you've bought a ticket to go watch it, I think is fair. The problem is with Rotten Tomatoes is you have to have bought a ticket from Fandango or one of its associated movie theaters, which is Cinemark, Regal, and also AMC, which you would think, oh, what's the problem with that? Those are US companies, those aren't all around the world. So with that, you're taking away the critics from everywhere else besides the US, leaving out a lot of people that could actually give a good, honest review of the movie. And that's not the critic side of the review, that's the audience side. So you're unfortunately taking away so much of the audience that actually would be able to give it a good, honest review. And for me, when it comes to a critic, it would be good to show, when it comes to the scoring, it would be good to show the critics, like, oh, this person has no idea about this movie. That way I know, okay, this person, I can better judge that their review either doesn't mean anything to me, or, oh, this person is a total fan of this and they still are saying it's bad, that means the movie's probably going to be bad. Or someone that is, not familiar with the movie saying, oh, well, I have no idea what the backstory of this movie is, but I like action, this thing is full of action, I like this movie, I recommend it. Even if you don't know what's going on, you will like this movie for what you see. Alright, cool, that's an actual honest review, I like that. But it just seems like a lot of people are either so far gone out of touch with what's going on, or are possibly getting paid off to give a good review. So that's my issue with Rotten Tomatoes on that aspect. And let's get into some examples real quick, because these examples are both hilarious and sad at the same time, depending on the movie that we're looking at. So the first one we're going to go ahead and look at is the season 1 of Batwoman, or Batwoman's, the show with Ruby Rose. And that one, unfortunately, is, for them, not unfortunately for the rest of us, is tanking. Now, if you go onto YouTube and just type in Batwoman reviews, you will be surprised at how bad the reviews really are. They are just trash, atrocious. The show is terrible. The acting is bad. Dialogue is terrible. The gender pushing for hating on men, which, to be fair, yeah, if you have a little bit here and there, that's one thing, but straight up just the whole thing is just to trash dudes, to say that we're like inferior and that, you know, women always do everything better. It's like that, not even to be sensitive, but that's just ridiculous, because it's not necessary. If you are Batwoman, why are you focusing so much on speaking down on men versus just focusing on what your goal is at hand, which is fighting crime? Tomato meter is at 70% and is considered fresh, with 40 ratings from critics, versus the audience score is at 12% with 5,971 ratings from the audience. And so also the ratings for the show each week and is starting to go down. It's going down about 10-15% every single week, which is another indicator that the show really is just garbage, not because of the fact that Ruby Rose is in it or anybody else particular. Just the show itself, the whole entity of the show is just crap. It's terrible. And so let's move on to the next one. We have Hustlers. Now, I've seen this. My wife made me watch this. And it is on Rotten Tomatoes, certified fresh at 88% with 286 people reviewing it versus 65% audience score with 16,065 people rating it. This movie is more so about strippers dealing with the hardships of the depression and trying to make ends meet, and also really focuses on a friendship of two main characters in the movie and their roadblocks and hurdles that they have to go through together, and then unfortunately they split at the very end. Because it pretty much the movie is just a narration from one particular character. And this is kind of more, I think it's ridiculous, personally. Maybe it's just a bias score for me, but for it to be 88% fresh, when if you were to flip the roles and it would be a movie of men doing that to a bunch of women, that wouldn't even leave the table for it to actually make it to being started to being production and to be have a whole script written about it. So, but again, I digress. That's just, I guess, my personal opinion on that. Then we have Star Wars: The Last Jedi. So obviously anything Disney-wise, they want to have a great score for it because Disney is trying to monopolize the movie industry and to have all the money go in their direction. And they're now trying to, instead of having an idea and focusing on that for their movies, they're trying to pander to every single person. And when you try to pander to everybody, you please nobody. And so this one is certified fresh on Rotten Tomatoes at 91% from 454 people with an audience score of 44% from 212,042 people. So for me, I tried watching this, I couldn't even finish the whole thing through. It's just crap. It's just not necessary. And that's why too, even as a trilogy from The Force Awakens, The Last Jedi, and now The Rise of Skywalker, The Rise of Skywalker takes place after the 7th movie. This movie is its own idea and own following, which is stupid. It's much like the Terminator movie that's coming out, or is already out at this point. The idea that this doesn't even follow lore, it doesn't even follow any of the ideas that Star Wars actually hadn't originally planned, and it's just a bad, like visually it's a good movie, but just otherwise it's just a bad movie. There's no real story to it. It's trash. And the audience is saying it. It's just garbage. But obviously, critics are going to say everything good positive about it because they want to fill seats. And that to me is a way to show they possibly have people being paid to say that for them, especially with how few critics compared to the audience there is. Another one is, this is more of one that was given a bad score, but the audience is saying otherwise, which is, and this is a movie I actually really like too, which is Godzilla King of the Monsters. Now, Godzilla 2014 was said to not have enough monster fight in it, and monster action, because Godzilla was only in the movie for about 8 to 12 minutes, average, which I completely agree. They focused a lot on the military. They focused a lot on the family. It was Ford Brody and his family, and trying to deal with the dynamic of he lost his father because his father was tracking and figuring out that Godzilla and the Mutos existed, to trying to help Godzilla to defeat the Mutos. So people are saying, oh, there's not enough monsters in it, too much focus on the human aspect. Again, I agree. Now, Godzilla King of the Monsters comes around, and you have 4 new monsters, or you have 3 new monsters. You have 4 because you can include Godzilla, then you have Rodan, Mothra, Ghidorah, and then you have all the other Titans that really only have, you know, collectively maybe 5 minutes total of screen time all together. And people are saying, oh, there's too much monsters, not enough focus on the human aspect and the human plot that makes the movie go forward. I don't know. Where's the line then? Where's the healthy balance for you critics? Because we as audience members loved it. This showed us exactly what we wanted, which was giant monster fights. I don't know what kind of plot you really want from a movie about giant monster fights other than giant monster fights. And there was a lot of focus on the human aspect. I mean, there was, even in a lot of the critical scenes when, you know, Godzilla and Ghidorah first fought, there's a lot of panning away from the fight to focus on what the humans are doing. Ghidorah and Rodan fought in the air over this ocean, and even on the screen, it was even said, oh, they're killing each other. But then you focus on O'Shea Jackson Jr.'s issue of trying to bring the Osprey to the Argo, and then, you know, 2-3 minutes pass by, and then all of a sudden you see Ghidorah shoot a gravity beam at Rodan and fight's over. So what happened between the 30 minutes that were going on? And obviously people are saying, oh, it's budget, which is true. But there's a lot of focus on the human side of it. There's a lot of focus on the monsters as well. But people were giving it a bad review because there were enough issues with people to give them enough plot in a giant monster movie. So I don't, again, that's, the audience was saying that it's good because it was, and it's going to set up Godzilla vs. Kong very well. And I cannot wait to see that. But again, that's just another example of it's ridiculous how you try to do one thing to please somebody and it just doesn't work out. You try to do something else and it doesn't work. Where's the balance? There seems to be none for some of these critics. Captain Marvel. Now this is the issue. I may not have covered it earlier because I don't remember. But when it came to Rotten Tomatoes, they decided to get rid of the interested or not interested option for the movies, and it stems from Captain Marvel. A lot of people were giving Captain Marvel a not interested review, and so to get ahead of this, Rotten Tomatoes was going and deleting all of the negativity around it but keeping all the positivity, which is very biased. If you're going to delete all the negatives, you need to delete all the positives too, because then you're only giving an idea that, oh, this movie is good, when if there's a lot of people saying it's bad, there's probably a reason for that. Even if it's a bias against the actress or the character itself, there's probably at least still a reason that the movie is getting that, and you need to get rid of all of it or don't get rid of any of it. And they also were going on record to say, oh, well, this movie's getting bad reviews and being review bombed before the movie comes out, so we need to go ahead and handle the situation before the movie comes out. On Rotten Tomatoes, you cannot review a movie as an audience member before the movie comes out. You can only do it after. And so they were thinking that a lot of people were going to confuse the not interested option with the critic and audience member scores, which is not. Once it's out, there's no more interested or not interested. It's either it got a good score or a bad score, and that's it. And they thought people would get confused, so they just decided to get rid of all of the negativity for this movie, which is, again, ridiculous. It's just a bias to get people to fill seats for Captain Marvel when there's a lot of proof that there was a lot of empty seats in movie theaters, but there's tickets being sold out everywhere. So therefore, possibly it's a suspicious activity that Disney was actually buying the tickets for those theaters that were being empty to be able to boost up and show that the movie is doing very well. So again, that's more of just a bias towards certain movies and just pushing the idea that the movie is doing well. Then we have, for the last one of the movies, is the Joker. This one was controversial because of the things that happened previously, like for example the Aurora, Colorado shooting where the person dressed up as the Joker and shot at the movie theater, killing multiple people. And even the 5 family members wrote an open letter to Warner Brothers asking them to pay into gun restriction laws and to not give money to people who support the NRA, which you shouldn't be asking a movie theater, or not a movie theater, but a movie company to get into politics when it comes to this. Their job is to make movies. Also, people were saying that this movie is supposed to be advocating a lot of gun violence and is too real, or giving a lot of realism towards mental health, mental illnesses, and how it affects people, especially with a society that just kind of pushes them down and keeps them down and makes them feel very, very bad about themselves, and to where they have nowhere else to go. And unfortunately, the character Arthur Fleck snaps in this movie. And so this is more of a character story and a character origin of how he becomes a Joker, not because he is the Joker throughout the whole movie, but at the very end he becomes the new identity within him that is the Joker. And so a lot of people were just, again, saying it was too real, it was too gruesome, there's a lot of gun violence, and it incite a lot of mass shootings, which is not true. It has nothing to do with that. This is simply just a movie. And people were mad because of everything that Arthur Fleck was going through. And it's like, for the character that you loved from Heath Ledger as the Joker, for the people that he killed in that movie, you would think that his life is going to be growing up, going to be a bunch of sunshine, flowers, and butterflies, and rainbows, and all that. No. He has a very hard life. He has a lot that he's dealt with. And this is an origin story for what it took for him to become the Joker, and unfortunately all the trials and the hardships that he faced. And so this one got 68% from 490 people versus the audience score of 89% from 49,723 people. So, take that as you will from the audience scores and the critics, which again, critics were more out of tune, and a lot of people were just hating on the movie because of the stigma that was not justifiably existing towards the movie. So the next one is going to be Dave Chappelle, Sticks and Stones. And this one, this was my favorite one that I got to find. I actually had to find a screen grab of this one before, because at the very beginning, because of the controversial topics that he talked about, all the political correctness that he didn't have, he was not trying to push anything to the side. He was going to talk about everything, and he was going to be unapologetic about everything he talked about. And Rotten Tomatoes decided to give him a 0% completely rotten on their site, which they had a total count of 5 people. For me, you would not find you would think for for example, Amy Schumer, she got 79% on hers stand-up special Growing, and she had a total count of 14 people. So you'd think out of one of the 14 people, there's definitely at least one person that rated it very high. Now, the 5 people that rated Dave Chappelle's, everyone rated him apparently 0. And, they always have a critic consensus where it kind of describes the art that you're seeing. On Dave Chappelle's, it says no consensus. Also, on the audience score, there is none. But then you look at how the general audience looked at it, and this was, I think, 2 days ago that I screen grabbed this one. The critic consensus now is edgy but empty. Sticks and Stones won't break any bones, but it won't incite many laughs either, with an audience score of 99%, which the audience score from the beginning is at 99%, and the tomato meter is at 35%. It's just still rotten. So again, that's more of a bias and an untrustworthiness where they are having their credibility being questioned. That's the whole point of this, just the questionable credibility of Rotten Tomatoes, and hopefully people don't use that as a real guide as to when they're going to go watch something. They actually just use their own heads and say, I either want to watch this or I don't want to watch this, and watch the trailers. Get the information that you need. Don't just go to Rotten Tomatoes and say, oh, they say it's good. That doesn't mean anything. Because again, they don't really say they don't speak about the background of who actually critiques it. Are they familiar with the work? Are they not familiar? Give us a rundown. That way we get an honest review. But obviously, because that actually makes sense, they're not going to do it. So, last thing I'm going to go over is, for example, one person who was critiquing things on Rotten Tomatoes. He is a critic. And the last thing we're going to review is Nicholas Barber, who was a critic for Rotten Tomatoes, and how his scores, for some reason, are being altered by Rotten Tomatoes. So let's look at the first one, which is the Joker. He gave it a 3 out of 5 and an 82%. And that one is rotten. So then we have below it Spider-Man Far From Home. 3 out of 5 and certified fresh at 90%. and the 3 out of 5 is fresh. Now, Avengers Endgame, 3 out of 5, that's fresh, and 94%, which is certified fresh. So why was the Joker, which is 3 out of 5, is all 3 movies got a 3 out of 5, why was the only one to get a rotten the Joker? Whereas the Marvel movies all got fresh, especially certified fresh. So that is kind of questionable. Even if you are a fan of Marvel, you would say that even that would be questionable. So here's the one last example about how the scores are being altered. So you have Mission Impossible Fallout, which is 3 out of 5. It's rotten within 97% certified fresh rating. And then you have Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, which is at a 3 out of 5, which is fresh, but at a 48% rotten. Now both of those, again, 3 out of 5, and then the second scores are obviously far apart. But again, why, if they're both rated 3 out of 5, why is one fresh and one rotten? So, again, this is just a look at the credibility and the lack thereof or the questionable credibility that Rotten Tomatoes is starting to bring to the table these days, and why I don't think that their scores even matter. It's more of the audience score that really does kind of say into it, because when you have a total of, for example, it was one of the movies, I forgot, I'm too tired to go look back at it, but it was 500 people that were critiquing it out of 20,000, so you have 2.5% of people saying that it's this score when the audience is saying something else. And so that to me just tells me that a lot of the people, the critics, are out of touch with either the story, the lore, or just anything that involves the movies. And there's also a lot of pushing towards paid review scores, so that way they can fill seats, or to be able to trash a movie to not fill seats. And again, it's just personal opinion. This is just how it looks to me. But now I want to know what your thoughts are. What do you guys think about this? Do you trust Rotten Tomatoes? Do you not like Rotten Tomatoes? Do you not really care? With everything I showed, please leave your comments and your thoughts down below. I would love to know what you guys actually think about it. But with that said, if you like the video, want to see more, please go ahead and hit the subscribe button and hit the bell notification to be notified when a new video comes out. Also, if you like this video, please go ahead and give it a like. And again, leave your thoughts down below. I would love to know what you guys actually think about it. Other than that, I hope you guys have a good one. I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care.